You're doing a lot of AR, even some mixed reality. So maybe to start, explain what AR is.
I think a real simple example to think of it is, imagine like Lego blocks that are placed digitally on your table, but you don't need to tap your screen to move them. You can actually take your hand and move the digital Lego blocks. So I see it as not only is Meta, not only is Apple really racing towards owning this multi-trillion-dollar market that will literally dominate every aspect of our lives, but there are tons of smaller companies that are not maybe focused on the hardware, but they're focused on the software, the experiences. The vision for AR today is done through the camera phone, and mixed reality is done through, for example, the Quest headset. But as the world progresses and the hardware gets better, AR is going to be more incorporated into our lives through smart glasses and everything else that's coming.
A lot of my friends with young kids are like, no, we don't want technology. We don't want more screens for our kids. How do you change that narrative to people? How do you explain it to them in a way that gets them to think differently?
Apprehensiveness right now, because the industry is very young, and that's how anything new usually is. People are first scared, then they start using it, then they start seeing the benefits, and slowly that fear fades away the same way it did with smartphones. And that's what life is all about, I believe, in a big way. Humans coming to this plane, taking basic objects, adding their emotions and attachments to it, and through that creating something of value.
Today, we journey into a world where sneakers meet silicone chips and digital fashion with reality. This is the story of OD Labs, a Canadian brand that's not just selling clothes, they're selling an experience. For many, OD started as a fashion line, and guess what? It sells out every single collection. And at the helm is Tetra, a visionary artist and techie who's blurring the lines between what's real and what's virtual. Tetra, you are the artist and CEO of OD Labs and ODTO. You started as a store in Toronto selling sneakers, art, and collectibles, and now OD Labs is known as the AR Tech Wizards. How do you feel about this term, AR Tech Wizards?
First time I'm hearing it, but I'll take it. Any compliment is a good compliment. Yeah, I mean, the progression has been very natural. I've been an artist. I mean, you can see this in my studio. There's art everywhere. And I've been programming AR for many years now. And it was just a natural progression from just creating pieces for myself and for my collectors to then, incorporating it with fashion and then bringing it on chain and just everything else that we're doing with OD Labs.
Now, can you explain the term AR? Because I think for a lot of people, it's still very unclear, and you're doing a lot of AR, even some mixed reality. So maybe to start, explain what AR is. Like, how can you dissect it a little more for us?
I mean, in the simplest terms, it's the augmentation of reality. To augment is to add on, is to basically bring something onto something. And augmenting reality is exactly that. We kind of look at it as like reality as like the base layer, as the layer zero. And every layer that you build on top of reality becomes the layer ones and the twos and the threes. And that's what AR is, except for, the vision for AR today is done through the camera phone, and mixed reality is done through, for example, the Quest headset. But as the world progresses and the hardware gets better, AR is going to be more incorporated into our lives through smart glasses and everything else that's coming. So AR in a lot of ways is just adding something onto a layer of reality.
Yeah, I wanted to mention too, your bio on X says building the future of mixed reality. What is mixed reality? Because I think, again, AR, mixed reality, these are terms that not a lot of people can comprehend right now.
For sure. The simplest way to think of it is like to think of what XR is. So everything outside of our base reality is known as XR, which is extended reality. Now, extended reality has a lot of divisions under it. It has virtual reality, which is what you've known as like the headsets, where you go completely in another virtual world. You're no longer here. You're playing a game or you're watching a movie, but you have no connection to the world around you. You have augmented reality, which is adding something onto the layer of this reality, adding some sort of a superimposed 3D or 2D image onto this layer of reality. And mixed reality is not only having that asset be augmented onto this reality, but one, having it have real world interactions. Like, for example, when you scan our physical hoodies, there's assets that come out through those hoodies because they're attached to them. And two, mixed reality is a form of being able to manipulate augmented reality with real world objects like your hand. I think a real simple example to think of it is, imagine like Lego blocks that are placed digitally on your table, but you don't need to tap your screen to move them. You can actually take your hand and move the digital Lego blocks. And that creates the mix between the two realities. But when you take VR, AR, and MR and put them all together, they all fall under the umbrella of XR, which is just all extended realities.
So tell us more about your background. What is Tetra's story? How did you go from clothing line to now grabbing things from a physical hoodie?
I mean, I think my interests have stayed the same a lot throughout the years. I've always been artist centric. I've ran music studios. I've been in the fashion business. I've kind of been in, even when it comes to digital assets, I've been in the collectible business for a long time. I mean, since 2016, when we originally started OD, obviously OD launched in 2019, but we started much earlier in the market, trying to predict trends, see what collectibles are the best and what comes up next. And throughout all these years, I obviously always stayed true to what I was, which was an artist. Since I was probably in my 12, 13, I was doing graffiti, I was painting. And I think over the years, I started realizing that a lot of pieces that I was creating, I would never get to take home with me. And when you're younger, you also create pieces without even taking a photo of them or caring. You're just doing it for the fun of doing it. And over time, I started wanting to capture some of those moments and keep them for my studio, keep them for my home. So I started painting on canvas, and over time, I realized the canvas price point is so hard for some of my younger collectors to get into. So I started designing fashion. A lot of it was just natural progression, creating for the sake of creating and just loving what I do. And it just one fell into the other. And same with augmented reality. I mean, the main vision of how we got here was somewhere around 5 years ago. My co-founder, Bat Not Bad, who's one of the biggest CGI artists in the world, was at my studio. We were actually just sitting right behind me here. And we were kind of talking about what the next progression of digital art and physical art is. And at the time I was telling him the vision that I have for all these paintings to come to life and these objects to be flying across the room and all these things that I can see. I wanted to be able to translate them. And he was the one that actually was oh, well, we can do this. Let me start teaching you how to program on Spark and build experiences. And from there, just, us being friends and creating things together, it naturally progressed into us starting a company together and doing it more professionally.
So what was going on in your mind, right? You're saying you're an artist, but you were thinking, what's the next evolution of my canvases? So how did you get to mixed reality and AR, right? I know for me, when I entered this type of Web3 world, Mark Zuckerberg really influenced a lot of my choices at the very beginning when he changed his company name to Meta. But what was it for you that sparked this, I need to be doing this, this is the future?
Well, I think a big part of it was just the fact that as an artist, you might be seeing so many more, as a painter, for example, a canvas is finished when you decide it's finished. Mm-hmm. It's not technically ever finished. You can keep adding layers. It could keep telling another story. It could keep having iterations. And most painters decide when they want to step away from a canvas rather than when it's fully done. And from my perspective, it was a way to never step away from something, be able to build digital iterations, layers based on top of my physical work that can keep doing that storytelling and telling other layers of what's happening within this work. And I think as a artist, at least I've been the type of person that when I do something a lot, I start dreaming in those patterns, seeing things in those patterns, it becomes a big part of just how I live. And when I'm, in the cycle of painting a lot and being, full blown creative, maybe less a bit of a CEO and more of just a creative director and artist, I start seeing things in so many painted patterns that I start seeing so many versions of the same painting. And then, when you see it physically for yourself, you would love to be able to translate that vision to others. But the only way you can really translate that vision is through a 2D experience. So I can create a video, show you a render, and that would be very cool. But I think just 2D experiences are not nearly as profound as stepping into a 3D mixed reality world. When people actually step into my exhibit and, the one that I did for the past 2 years at Art Basel, you get to see people experience a whole new way of physical art coming to life. And I think as an artist, one of the biggest goals that you have is to be able to make your work connect with people, show them things that they possibly didn't know were possible, and then make them feel things that in the moment maybe they weren't feeling. So I think mixed realities and augmented reality in general is such a powerful technology for being able to do exactly that.
Do you think that is the future? Do you think mixed reality is the future? It's where we are all headed?
100%, 100%. I mean, if you even look at the patterns of the larger corporations, I mean, Meta didn't change their name to Meta because they wanted to create a virtual world where you play it through like, pressing up, down, left, right on your keyboard. Meta's larger vision was to compete with Apple and be able to, fight for this new hardware race, which is who is going to be the new iPhone, who is going to be the new smartphone. Apple's not going to be giving you a smartphone for the next 100 years. Like, in 2086, people aren't going to be standing around using the iPhone 80.
What do you think they're reality of it is, what do you think they're going to be using in 2086?
Glasses, lenses. I mean, if you go, way into the depths of it, you start looking at companies like Neuralink that are trying to like negate the need for any of that and just go straight to chips. But I think you don't have to have an invasive chip. You don't have to actually go the route of getting a Neuralink installed in you to be able to get the benefits of being more in symbiosis with technology. I think there's a very external way of being in symbiosis, which is you can have a pair of glasses where when you choose to take it off, you take it off, and it's not an invasive piece that's actually attached to you. Because ultimately, most of the technologies that we're using today, they already allow us to be in a way in symbiosis with technology. Like, for example, most of the hardware, I would say, like the phone that we hold, allows us to already be in symbiosis. It's just that it's a third-party device. It's still separated from us, and it still requires multiple layers of interaction for us to be able to get that information. But as we move towards glasses and lenses, you kind of remove those barriers and make it so that you are able to download that information just that much faster and be able to interact that much faster. So I think even today, I posted something like last week that showed people for New Year's all standing in front of the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
And they were like, standing with their phones. And I was like, for the people who are afraid of where the world's going with glasses and stuff, you actually have to realize that it's less dystopian. Today, people almost don't even experience the moment because they're all holding their phones up. In a world where your glasses are already scanning, they're already recording, they're already streaming, they're already doing all that for you, you can actually be more in the moment and present and enjoy what's happening in this version of in this layer of reality. So I see it as not only is Meta, not only is Apple really racing towards owning this multi-trillion-dollar market that will literally dominate every aspect of our lives. But there are tons of smaller companies that are not maybe focused on the hardware, but they're focused on the software, the experiences, the multiple layers that are going to be built in this new reality that's fast approaching.
Yeah, I mean, I have an Oculus. I guess at this point it would be considered version 1 already. Mm-hmm. But it is difficult to want to wear it for over an hour, I would say, personally, for me. Absolutely. So are you saying that, do you see us leaning towards glasses, goggles? Because, the work that you're doing, we see it a lot, like with our phones, but then it comes out of the phone almost, right? Mm-hmm. It feels like we can touch it. Are you saying this is where we're headed? So would you say we're going to be more used to wearing some sort of device on us and removing this?
Well, I don't think in the short term. I think in the short term, even if you look at the goals of what a Quest 3, so like the difference between, for example, the Oculus's, the Quest 2 and the Quest 3, is that we moved more towards superimposition of digital assets onto the physical world. So with the Oculus, with the Quest 3 right now, it is more of a mixed reality device than a VR device. You're able to actually see the world around you. I mean, we just released a game called Asylum that people are able to play. Assets are flying in your room. There's like a gun that gets placed on the table. You literally reach out to the table in your room, grab the gun, and you're shooting things. So it's literally bringing the digital world into the physical. And when people see that, it's very exciting. But still, those devices are very, they're much lighter than the Oculuses, but they're still heavy. The Apple device itself is being advertised as like a home computer device. It's not being advertised as take this out, go for a walk in the park. It's being advertised as like, let's replace some of your home hardware needs, because why should somebody have 5 monitors? And, all these monitors become outdated in a couple of years. Mm-hmm. They become, bio waste. We're, tossing them out and just filling up landfills. While on the other side, rather than having 5 monitors and a TV and all these things, you can basically have all of this digital hardware be replaced by software. You could be sitting in your home space. You could have a computer device on and be able to operate between a multitude of screens and everything else that you want. So I think in the short term, it's very much geared towards replacing your home computer. But in the long term, as the hardware gets better, it will become the smartphone that you actually walk out with. It will become the object that actually the hardware that you use to do all your daily functions.
It's very interesting, out of all the NFT collections that we've seen over the last 3 years, yours stands out in many different ways. Obviously, there's fashion, now there's a game. I also wanted to talk about, the fact that you guys, right, OD Labs is one of the first on-chain mixed reality collectibles. Now, what does that mean and how does that work?
Well, it is actually the first on-chain mixed reality collection. There has been collectibles in the past on different chains that are AR activated. Ours is not only the first full collection of these on-chain companions, but it comes with its own iOS app. It's activated from day one. It's not like, I was very adamant. I've been in this space since 2016, bought my first NFTs in 2017 before they were ever called NFTs. And really my vision wasn't to create something that, promises what we're going to do like 2 years later. I really believed in our vision. So we knew we can go out and build it and then ship it rather than, do the opposite. And a big focus of what we're doing today really is to sell not necessarily a game asset, because I don't see us as a gaming company. And it's not necessarily to sell like an access pass. Like I don't see us as like as a club of like, of that sort. I see us as like a very innovative community of people that are very like-minded, interested in the future, wanting to see what the bleeding edge of technology is. And for us, we're releasing an art piece. That's what I am. I'm at the very base an artist, and the piece that's coming out is the very first collectible art piece that will be on chain and be activated in mixed reality. So that's very much our focus, and I believe in the long term, when thousands and thousands of collections will come onto mixed reality, as this space does get more democratized, more people actually learn how to be able to program in mixed reality. I believe that many collections will come out. There will be an entire wave of these collections, and for us, it's just we want to like usher in that new movement and create something that we know a lot of other artists will take inspiration from and want to create as well.
Walk us through the difference between your typical NFT versus the one that you're creating, this mixed reality collectible. What does that even mean?
Well, I think NFTs fit a few different niches, right? On one side, maybe they're just digital identity. They're nothing else. They're community driven digital identity. We all relate to each other. And, that's why we are basically representing whatever this JPEG is. On another side, they become access tokens to clubs, right? Maybe we're hosting IRL events. Maybe there are token gated accesses to drops. And really it's, you getting access pass to a club. And on another side, right now, I think a big wave is the gaming tokens. So you're essentially buying into a PFP or an asset that might give you access to some sort of a gaming ecosystem. Ours, and then obviously, like the one of the ones that really brought me into the space. I came into the space with CryptoKitties, but like what really got me interested in the space was the art and like seeing people actually put their art on chain. So there is that aspect as well, the one-on-one artists and the people that are essentially putting their art on chain. And for us, it's going more the route of an art piece, but an art piece that utilizes the technology beyond just the immutable on-chain forever ownership, sovereignty, like beyond just the aspect of what it is to put an asset on chain. We wanted that mergence of art and technology. And my vision was to essentially create an asset that doesn't just live hiding in your wallet. And maybe you put it as your PFP and people get to see it. But other than that, it's just living inside of a wallet and nobody gets access to it. I was thinking that, in the world that we're going towards, the actual relatability to your assets, seeing your assets on a daily basis, whether it's a physical product that sits in your room or whether it's a digital product that we can superimpose into your room, builds that relatability where people fall in love with the asset more and more, and they love the art piece more and more. So the real goal is to basically bring in an asset that from day one can be activated so that people can see it. They can actually experience it, not just hold it, but actually experience it. And the great part about what we're doing is that at its very base layer as a collectible, it's a great piece. Like just that, if we move past everything else that I have a vision for in the future, at a very base layer that it's just a collectible, it's a great piece. It's the first of its kind. It, fits a market that is only going to grow. But the exciting part is that the hardware is getting better every single year. And that only opens up our ability to be able to make the assets do more and more throughout the years. And that's the exciting part, that, not only is blockchain accelerating and the ecosystem's growing, but mixed reality is fast growing. Extended reality XR divisions are fast growing. Meta, Apple, multiple other companies are investing billions every single year into this industry. And for us, it's, we're creating on a layer that's so expandable that just makes it exciting for us. But again, it's like I've reiterated this so much throughout all the spaces and conversations that I had with all of our community, which is like, you're not buying into this dream and hope of like, oh, it's a gaming asset, we're the next Pokemon Go, like all this stuff. Like, that's none of the stuff I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is, this is a collectible. It's a really great piece of art. It's the first of its kind. It's doing something that nobody else has done before. A lot of times people who innovate are the ones that actually initially kind of get crucified because, like, nobody believes in their vision. Maybe 5 years later, people suddenly wake up and they go like, holy, like these guys, wow, they did it 5 years ago. But in the moment, a lot of people don't get that message and they don't actually relate to it. You saw that with CryptoPunks. You've seen that with a lot of things at its time. And I kind of see us as doing something that we truly believe in, and we can translate that message pretty well. So we've built a really solid base of people that also believe in it as well. But I think in the coming years, all the disbelievers that right now are like, oh, this is just a fad, as they suddenly see how big this industry gets, and they suddenly see that, oh, wow, like the manufacturers that you're buying your hardware from are all moving towards this. There will be a day that they discontinue these phones and you're literally using these glasses. Then people will look back and be like, wow, like 8 years ago, these guys were so ahead of their time. They were creating something that nobody saw at the moment except for their core community. And we all just thought it was a phase.
Yeah. What do you think you've learned over the last, 5-6 years? You said you started in 2016. What did you learn from past NFT collections that you're now here saying, this is what I don't want to do? I mean, I know you touched on it a bit, but what would you say you learned the most?
I think the main thing is being realistic to your product and being confident in what you have. I know art is subjective. Everyone's not going to love a piece that I create, but I do know I love it. I know that I will be a collector of my own work. That's been the main reason why I got into painting. It wasn't necessarily the main way that I wanted to make money in life, or it wasn't the monetary aspect that drove me towards it. But how I look at a lot of these collections is that a lot of times I feel like they didn't believe in their product enough and the real vision of what they could deliver. So they promised a lot of things that in the moment they knew they couldn't, but they hoped they can. And it sets up your community for false speculation. It sets up people for ultimately like failure, because whether it's within a few months or a few years, eventually people wisen up and realize that, you just aren't able to deliver on those things. And I think that's been the biggest problem in this industry. And it goes further back than NFTs. I mean, it happened in the ICO era. In 2017, every one of these ICOs was going to be the new internet of money, and they were going to change the medical industry, and there was a million of them, right? And I invested in a bunch of them. So this has kind of been the roadmap of how people raise money in crypto, and I see that as another problem as well. If you have a product, you don't need to raise money, you sell the product. Raising money means that you don't have a product, you have a vision, and people need to believe in you. They need to help you raise, and then you go out and build it. So I kind of see it as the opposite. If you have a vision, figure it out, build it yourself, put together a team that also believes in it with you, bootstrap the ecosystem yourself, and get the product out, and then find the product market fit.
So the art, obviously art, fashion, game, you're building this all on Ethereum. Is there a reason why? I know in the last few months there's been a sort of like Solana craze. Why Ethereum, and what do you say to people who say Ethereum is expensive?
Well, Ethereum is expensive, and I think that isn't so much a problem as it also works as a value proposition, same as ordinals, right? Ordinals are very expensive, but the value proposition of the ordinal is that not only are the block times slower, but you're not buying this so you can transfer them back and forth 15 times in 10 minutes. No, you're buying it as a collectible. So it's almost like the slow block times and the expensive transactions are a function, not a problem.
Wow. Okay.
I also see... Yeah, and
That's
I see the same for Ethereum.
Take. Not a lot of people say that.
But I think, at the core base of it, that is what it is, which is like, if you're buying something on ordinals, you're really buying it to keep. You're not buying it to do 10 trades in a minute. I think on Solana, that's a great aspect of what it has: fast transaction times and subsidized gas fees. So I think in today's Solana's ecosystem, it is really great for people to be able to quickly trade these assets back and forth. But I see it as a collectible as something that maybe initially off of launch, you're going to want to trade a bunch back and forth to find the perfect one. But when you find the perfect one, the whole aspect of it is how long do you want to keep this collectible for? If you think about great art pieces, people don't buy them and constantly trade them. They usually buy them and stays in their family for generations. And for us, the reason why I believe in building on Ethereum is not because only it has one of the most robust developer communities. A lot of the things that are being done on Solana and ordinals and everything right now are basically things that have already been done on Ethereum, because so much innovation does happen on Ethereum. And even though there are certain lulls in the market and moments where things kind of feel down, that's not really it's not really real, because there's just so many developers that are creating dApps right now, layers on top of Ethereum. There's so much development that's happening on that ecosystem that just because there's a hype cycle that says, oh my God, like things are pumping on Solana right now, means that suddenly everybody should abandon the ship. I actually believe it's the time for people that really believe in this ecosystem to double down and prove why they want to build here, rather than immediately abandoning ship every time the hype has fallen out. Because if that's how you operate in any ecosystem, and especially in crypto, then you're always going to be left behind, because what's hot today is not going to be hot in 6 months. That's just not how it works. The ecosystems move really fast, narratives change really quick, and we're always one news away from everything changing. So I believe that there's a lot of art provenance on ETH. I believe a lot of great artists have brought their art on chain on ETH. At the same time, I believe that it serves as the perfect middle ground, where sure, transactions are not 1 cent and immediately done, but they're also not 15-minute block times, which allows us to be able to actually create art pieces that are a little bit more dynamic, because there are functions that we haven't spoken about yet that we're actively working on the background that have to do with, slightly faster transactions. We don't need the transaction time of Solana. I mean, it would be great if we had that on Ethereum, but we don't necessarily need it. But we also can't go as slow as what it is on ordinals. So I see it as the perfect middle ground of having the art collectability of ordinals and the transactional layer of Solana, and being the middle of both worlds sometimes to people seems like the worst thing. But in a lot of scenarios, if you actually look at it, from a outside point of view and really see how it fits your product, I think for us, it's the best thing. And that's kind of like why we're going to create this. And I think also like the most important thing is also the feel of it. I gauge everything that I said between the developers and everything else that I related to why it works for us. It's also like, how does that feel? And to me, it feels like this is the right market fit for what we're building. No other chain right now sits as that. And that doesn't mean in the future there isn't going to be experimentations that we do other places. But for this collection and for what we're building today, Ethereum is the perfect market fit.
Did you get any backlash ever, having jumped in this space? Or are you that type of person that's always been considered a weirdo because you're an artist and you draw and like you paint, and people are like, okay, he's doing some new weird thing? What's that been like? Any backlash at all? Or
no, I mean, even from like putting this for my majority of my followers on Instagram, for example, and most of the people on Instagram are not crypto people. So even though I've been talking about crypto and NFTs and I was on those early Clubhouse days and teaching people how to set up wallets and, after posting it on my Instagram and letting people know, there was never a backlash. I mean, I think if anything, people always looked at my art as like trying to do something new. And that's why, because of that, a lot of my collectors and people enjoyed it. I think honestly, throughout the years, I've probably maybe once or twice heard somebody have something bad to say, which is like very surprising, because I think a lot of people I think a lot of people, but also I think I'm very oblivious to if anything negative's happening. Nothing really affects me from that perspective. I believe in what I believe in, and I'm very strong with my convictions. which is also one of the things that we've been talking about lately in our spaces, which is, a lot of times founders get stressed in this ecosystem because there are so many voices. So many people are there on a space ready to tell you what you've done wrong, what you should do, how you should make it right. And a lot of times that puts pressure on founders. But I think what they don't realize is that this ecosystem is so robust and filled with people that are willing to voice their opinions. And that's extremely valuable because you're literally looking at a beta test group, which is willing to not only test your product, but exactly tell you what they love and hate about it. So a lot of times, maybe when criticism comes in, I don't even register it as criticism. I just register it as a great form of advisory, or advisory that's like nonsense. Because sometimes advisory is nonsense as well. It's not all good advice,
So how do you stay grounded as a founder? Because you're right, a lot of founders either have ran away, they blocked Twitter, or X, I should say. How do you stay grounded? How do you stay focused on what you're building?
Conviction and passion, like there is nothing that, it's a hard question. It's like, how do I stay grounded? Because I think it comes down to like, how do I maintain a good work routine? Comes down to like being healthy, working out, being able to work on things that I truly love, not sidetracking like my passion and my vision for market hype or what others are saying. In a lot of ways, if you truly believe and have a long-term vision for what you're building, I think it's very hard for anything to sidetrack you. I think when you get sidetracked is when, in a lot of ways, you don't actually believe the things that you yourself are saying. So I think for me, it's just, it's the conviction that really makes it all come together.
Yeah, I mean, what do you tell people? I mean, like I said before, I have an Oculus. I'm into this stuff, but a lot of my friends with young kids are like, no, we don't want technology. We don't want more screens for our kids. How do you change that narrative to people? How do you explain it to them in a way that gets them to think differently? Because, both of us are in this space. I think we both, have this conviction that this is the future, but how do you address it to people who are like, I don't want to know about this?
For sure. I mean, I think one of the biggest things is that, especially when it comes to mixed reality, it's such a new industry that most of the people who are saying things about it don't actually know much about it. What people think of mixed reality today is virtual reality, where your kids put on a headset, they're in this other world, and that's the most of the experience that anybody's had when it comes to anything in the XR division. So I think as mixed reality and AR become bigger, people will start realizing the power of what it has and how it actually enhances our life. Because in many ways, we are already extending our reality. I mean, there's a heads-up device, the HUD device on your car, and many cars where it tells you the GPS, turn left, turn right. If somebody knew that they could have that on their GPS in general and not be distracted while driving and possibly get in an accident, but literally just, have a pair of glasses that's telling them exactly where to go. If people realize that one day they can exactly know what their schedule is, what their dietary needs are, because their their glasses are scanning and telling them like, oh, this is the calorie, this doesn't fit your blood sugar, this does. Like when people realize like how many real world functions this is going to have, this isn't just for art. We are the ones that are building the funner layers, the experiential layers, the software that brings joy to people's days. But there's a lot of functionalities that are being built that are going to be used daily that are very mundane, and they'll just be looked at as the regular thing. Like nobody will be excited after a month of the GPS coming out, but trust me, you'll be using it every single day, right? So I think a lot of times people are afraid of what they don't know, but they quickly become adapted once they know it. And we kind of saw that in the past year with AI. About like a year and a half, 2 years ago, most people would think that AI was just like a Terminator movie, and they didn't really relate it to anything real. And a lot of those people are now using ChatGPT, and it progresses quite fast. And I think in the next few years we'll see how much faster that industry progresses as well. But I definitely do understand people's apprehensiveness right now, because the industry is very young, and that's how anything new usually is. People are first scared, then they start using it, then they start seeing the benefits, and slowly that fear fades away the same way it did with smartphones.
I'm thinking too of, the fashion line. First of all, you sold out all of your collections so far, but all the clothing that you created, I've seen so many videos of all these in real life events where people just get so excited to wear a hoodie or like jeans. I know your jeans sold out instantly, I think instantly, but they come to life. So, I also had Sophie on the channel a couple of weeks back, and, she was saying how fashion is just so boring right now. So, this is really, the future of what we're expected, I think, to see. But for a lot of people, it's hard to wrap their heads around. But why would you say, or why do you think, especially the clothing, why do you think that's catching people's attention?
Well, first off, fashion is one of the oldest industries in, in the human civilization. Even not think of it as fashion, but just clothing. It's one of the oldest utilities that we created. So being that it's been around for so long, it's very hard to innovate. And in many ways, today's fashion innovation is almost going overboard with a concept, like, maybe wearing a shoe as a bag or a hat as your shoes. It's like when you look at certain like fashion shows, they just try to go overboard for the sake of overboard, because at some point it's also hard to innovate in an industry that's been around for so long. And I think in the last bull run around that 2021 era, we saw how many fashion companies thought that digital wearables are the true next step in fashion. While I do believe that with the right SDKs and the right, worlds out there that allow these SDKs, and, I do believe that with the right metaverses and the right games and, the right compatibilities, yes, wearables can have a great future. I don't think they're necessarily the future of fashion, and I don't think they're anything new. They've been done already throughout every single video game that sold you game skins, in time. But I do believe is the real next progression of fashion is mixed reality and augmented reality, because it just allows you to add a brand new layer of experience to fashion. And that's what fashion is. Fashion is a statement of how you feel. It's a statement of what you want to express. And it's almost a signaling mechanism. It's a mechanism where you signal to the world what you represent. So I think in a lot of ways, adding these type of digital assets to fashion items not only can really represent that person, but help that person express themselves to others. And I think when designers and people in the fashion industry find out more about this technology, there will be a flood that will eventually happen, where almost I see a world where every single brand will have their own AR and MR experiences attached to their garments.
Before I let you go, I did want you to talk about the FNIC cards along with the Lulu collection. I think you guys already minted out, or I think it was like a week ago, but just talk to us about this card and Lulu collection.
Yeah, so the FNIC card is the Founders Neural Interface card. There's 333 founders in our community. How the FNIC essentially works is, the simplest term is to think of what mint passes used to be. You used to get a mint pass. It would list you into an ecosystem and be able to purchase that ecosystem's assets. For us, I remember originally when we were putting everything together, I thought, okay, great, we're innovating a lot of different things. We're innovating what the ownership of these assets are, how they work, how they function, everything else. I also want to innovate the process of how these assets get minted. So we created the FNICs, attached a Twitter API to them. So through the API, people are engaging, posting content, hosting their own spaces, and basically accumulating points. The more points they've accumulated over the past 6 months, every single week, 13 people were chosen for a free airdrop that we essentially send to their wallets. Every single Monday, we essentially chose 13 people that last week were our top community members. And it was not based on our discretion. It was all done based on the Twitter API. So it's real data, real information, and nobody gets, left behind. In that process, we got 333, which just finished actually on the 8th this Monday. And those assets are now not only used to be able to mint our Lulu collection, but they are actually working as the community-driven distribution method. So I think the best way to explain the FNIC is that the reason why I wanted to hand these out was because I had seen that in this industry, there was a lot of top-down marketing. In a lot of industry, there's top-down marketing. But I saw it where the consumers and the community members are so vocal, it doesn't make sense to have top-down marketing, because sure, you can give it to an influencer who speaks about it for 5 minutes and they promote it for you. And sure, maybe that has the larger reach. But if you actually have a community member that believes in your vision and talks about it every single day, it will have a much larger impact than just having an influencer that has that 5-minute interest. So rather than going the route of having that top-down method of distribution and trying to get all the influencers in, we focused on okay, let's find find people who are shoulder to shoulder with us, people who believe in our vision. They're at the ground level. They want to like be interested in this revolution. And then we distribute these to those. And not only do we give it to them, but we give them the opportunity to start bringing their friends. So each of these FNICs can be used to mint 5 of our on-chain assets, 5 Lulus. And when you're minting those, during the process, you're able to allow list 2 new wallets for each Lulu that you mint. So for example, if somebody goes ahead and mints all 5 of them, they can now allow list 10 of their friends. And those friends can go and mint 2 of their own. So that means 20 basically get distributed that way. And our vision for that really was that, you know, why should you be in a community? Because I had seen this before too. Why should you be in a community where by the time that it goes towards mint, everyone's super excited, and then your friends want to be involved with it, and you're like, oh, sorry, like I told you 3 months ago, but you can't get in. And then it creates that separation where a lot of times your friends can't get in with you. And, you know, I believe that's a big mistake. I believe a strong community is one that has a really strong base. And for that strong base, I want to have, you know, the great members that were here with us for 4 months, but now I want to have their friends. I want to have, you know, their closest friends in our group chats. I want them also being in the long journey with us. So this creates a community distribution method. Our community uses these cards to not only mint, but distribute it to their friends. And in the process, we call it the Founders Rewards, which is, you know, your energy, your time, all of these things are valuable. You're spending it on something. You might not be, these FNICs might have just been airdropped. They were free, but still you've spent your energy and time on them. Mm-hmm. So what we want to do is give you a reward structure. So a reward structure is every single person that you bring on into our ecosystem through these FNICs, you then end up earning 50% of their mint costs. So technically, if somebody in our community right now holds one of these FNICs, not only will they be able to mint 5 Lulus, but they'll be able to allow list 20 people and earn 50% of those 20 allow lists. And it's a very, it's a very new way to be able to, you know, build a base for our community and really incentivize our community to be along the journey with us.
Tetra, I have one last question. You know, you are an artist, and I've heard you on many, many spaces talking about the fact that you believe everyone is a creator, everyone is an artist. Why don't you explain to us how that is? Because we know that a lot of kids today have very creative minds, but they get told to go to school, get that degree, right? So how can everyone be a creator? How can everyone be an artist?
I think also it comes down to the definition of what a creator is. A lot of my work focuses around alchemy. And if you go back to the story of what an alchemist is, they used to be you know, scientists, magicians, whatever they, you know, they were classified differently, but they were people that were able to take basic metals, you know, any ordinary metal, and transform them into precious metals, into gold. And that process of transmutation for alchemists was what would make them so, you know, historically relevant. And most kingdoms were seeking to find their own alchemist. But what people don't realize is that in today's world, and like throughout all of history, but more than ever today, humans each are alchemists. You know, we take our basic words and we turn them into this interview. We take our basic words and we turn them into a great article. We take our basic, you know, like just hand skills and a pencil and turn them into a drawing that, you know, can transmute the value of that paper. And I think that's the power of transmutation. You know, a singer takes their words and creates a career that can make them millions of dollars from their stories. An artist takes their images and, you know, takes a piece of paper that's $2 and can convert it into something that's worth thousands. And that transmutation happens through the creativity of each person. So that's a big way, like a big message of like what we create with, like what I've always created with my art, and why I've always been focused on alchemical symbols, sacred geometry, and remembering the power that like each person has. And in our community, we've, you know, made that very evident for people. And that's why we've had people that realize that, okay, maybe I didn't think myself as an artist, but there's ways for me to be able to create. There's ways for me to get involved. And people that realize that maybe they didn't think of themselves as artists, but they've been creating things on a daily basis. You might just be creating a great meal at home that your family appreciates, that's more valuable than ordering McDonald's, you know. And it's like, that is what alchemy is. You're taking a basic ingredient and turning it into something special, into a memory, into a moment. And that's what life is all about, I believe, in a big way. It's humans coming to this plane and, you know, taking basic objects, adding their emotions and attachments to it, and through that creating something of value. And in that way, I think everyone is that.
I love that. Well, Tetra, thank you so much for being here, for choosing to be with us today. And of course, I'm going to be able to put all the right links, right? Like I always tell people on YouTube, don't like nobody, Tetra's not going to DM you, Girl in the Verse is not going to DM you. So just these are the official links down below. And like, you know, like all the other, whatever we always say, right? Not financial advice. And what are the other things we say? Yeah, don't click any links. Everything's a scam.
Based on a third-party investigation, we don't know how we got here.
Exactly. There you go. No, I really mean it, Tetra. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story. And for those of you who are interested, make sure to check out these links below, all about OD Labs. If you want to get those jeans, you're going to have to wait. And if you want to get in on this Lulu collection as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Tetra.